Hi everyone, welcome back to another video in the Web Security Academy series. In today's video, we'll be covering lab number 7 in the File Uploads Vulnerabilities module titled Web Shell Upload via Race Condition. If you do not have an account on the Web Security Academy, you can get one by visiting the URL portsugar.net/websecurity and clicking on the sign up button. I already have an account and I am logged in, so to access the exercise, I'm going to click on Academy. Select all labs. Do a search on file upload vulnerabilities and select lab number 7 titled Web Shell Upload via Race Condition. Alright, let's get started. This lab contains a vulnerable image upload function. Although it performs a robust validation on any files that are uploaded, it is possible to bypass this validation entirely by exploiting a race condition in the way it processes them. To solve the lab, upload a basic PHP web shell, then use it to exfiltrate the contents of the file /home/carlos/secret. Submit the secret using the button provided in the lab banner. You can log into your own account using the following credentials, and we're giving credentials for a regular user. Alright, so the target goal over here is to exploit a race condition in the file upload functionality and then exfiltrate the content of the /home/carlos/secret file. Now we are given a hint which includes the source code that is responsible for the file upload functionality, but we won't go over that right now. First, let's see how the application functions from a black box perspective. And then we'll kind of solve this lab from a white box perspective where we're given access to the code. All right, let's access the lab. Now notice over here, this is the built-in browser in Burp, and so all my requests are already being passed in my Burp proxy. Okay, the first thing we're gonna do is click on my account and log in with the credentials that we were given. So the password was Peter, hit login. And you could see over here, similar to previous labs, we have the ability to update an email address and to upload an avatar. Now, whenever you have an upload functionality, you definitely should test it for file upload vulnerabilities. If I go back to my directory over here, you could see I have a cat image that I'm going to upload and see how the application functions. So let's click on choose file. Click on cat.jpg, which I just got from online, and then upload it. Let's go back to notes and then back to my account. And now you should see our avatar being the cat image that we just uploaded. So let's go to Burp and send the request that we're responsible to Repeater. So this is the first one. Let's send this to Repeater. And then if we click over here and say don't filter by images and click on apply, we should see the get request that is responsible for displaying our cat image. So let's send that to Repeater. Okay, so we've got 2 requests in Repeater. The first one is a post request where we upload our image. And you could see over here, it's a JPEG file. And so we've got a JPEG file in the content of this parameter. And then once it's uploaded, we retrieve it from the endpoint /file/avatars. All right, so we knew a cat image would work. Now let's try and upload a PHP web shell. So let's say file, new file. Let's call it test.php. Create file. And just add a PHP shell that is responsible for outputting the content of the /home/carlos/secret file. Let's end our PHP script. And this looks good. Save it and then click on choose file right over here. Test.php, click on select and then upload. And we get an error saying sorry, only JPEG or PNG files are allowed. So if we go back to proxy right over here and look at our request that was responsible for performing that, let's send that to Repeater. You could see over here in the parameter, it's a test.php file, and this is the content of our PHP script. And whenever we try to upload it, we get a 403 forbidden saying that you can't upload this type of extension. Now, let's assume that we tried everything that we tried in the previous 6 labs and nothing worked. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to resort to a white box approach where we ask the developers to give us access to their code, and that's not uncommon. We do that in real life engagements. So we ask the developers to give us access to their code, and then we try to see if there's something that we might have missed while testing from a black box perspective. So this is the code that is responsible for the upload functionality. And you could see over here, it takes in the file that we're uploading, and then it temporarily moves it to another directory. And then it has a check over here. So a function called check for viruses and check file type. We've got check file type right over here, which validates it's only a JPEG and a PNG file type. And then check viruses, they don't give us the code that is responsible for that. But essentially, what it does is it checks if it's a valid file. If it is a valid file, it allows it to go through. However, if it's not a valid file, it'll remove it from the directory. So there's a very short period of time where the file is actually in this directory over here while it's being checked, and then it gets deleted once the code realizes that it's not a JPEG or a PNG image. So that's a race condition. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to perform this request over here and then really quickly try to perform this request, except we're going to be calling the test.php script. We're hoping that in that very short period of time, we're able to get the contents of the file that we want before it rejects the file and then deletes it. And to do that, we're going to use an extension called Turbo Intruder. So if you go to Extender right over here, and then you go to the BAP store and you search for Turbo, I've already done that, you'll see that there's a Turbo Intruder extension, which is available for everyone for free. And then you just click on the install over here, and you should see that it appears in your main window right over here. So I've got Turbo Intruder. Turbo Intruder is really similar to Intruder, except it's much faster and it's easily configurable because you could just add your Python code right over there. Now, I believe in the lab solution, it says that you could still do this manually, but when it comes to race conditions in real life, you really need to do it in an automated fashion because usually you don't have such a large period of time to exploit that race condition. You have milliseconds to exploit the race condition, and that's why you need an extension like Turbo Intruder to perform that. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to go to Repeater right over here. Let's send this to Repeater again. So we're going to say this is the upload web shell, and this is the execute web shell. And it's not really a web shell, it just outputs the content of the secret file. So let's say test.php over here. Now if I hit send over here, it'll give me a 404 not found because it deleted my file once it found out that it's not a PNG file and it's a PHP file. So we're going to send this one to Intruder by clicking on extensions, Turbo Intruder, send to Turbo Intruder. And in Turbo Intruder over here, you'll have a bunch of Python scripts. I'm going to go down to the race.py script. And essentially what this does is it sets the configuration for how fast you want the script to run. And then over here, what we're going to do is we're going to customize it and say run our post request first, and then run a bunch of the get requests really quickly to see if you get a 200 OK message or if you get a 404 message. Of course, if it's a 404, we're too late. But with a 200 OK message, that means the request went through and we were able to exploit the race condition. So we need to customize this a little bit. We don't need 30 concurrent requests. I would say 10 is more than enough, but we'll leave the rest as it is. And then we'll create 2 variables. So request 1. And that would be our post request. So we'll add it right over here within the comments. And then request 2, that would be our get request. And again, we'll add it in the comments in a bit. Now over here, we needed to perform the post request first, which is request 1. So we're going to say engine.queue request 1 gate is equal to race 1. And then for I in range, this range over here has to be less than the number of concurrent connections. And so let's say 8. Then we're going to say, I need you to perform request 2. So let's remove all of this. And that's essentially it. We'll keep everything else as it is. So let's copy request 1. It's this right over here. And remove all the white space. So that would be request 1, and request 2 is our get request. So we'll get that from repeater. So it's this one right over here. Let's copy it, paste it in here. And for the second request, let's remove spaces and new lines. It won't work without this. I'm not entirely sure why. So if you know why, post it in the comments. So essentially what we're doing over here is we've got 10 concurrent connections, and we're saying the first thing that I want you to do is request 1, which is our post request that uploads the web shell. And then immediately I want you to perform 8 concurrent requests for request 2. And what will happen is we're trying to perform the requests before the validation happens. And if we do that, we should get the content of the secret file. However, if our requests are slower than the validation, then we should get a 404 because the validation already removed our file for us. So let's click on attack. And we already have an error saying check extender for full details. We have some kind of error in our script. So let's halt, click on configure. I must have wrote something incorrectly. This should be race 1. I don't know where the single quotes went. All right, click on attack. And okay, interesting. So they're all 404s, which means they all failed, except one of them. All right, so this is surprising. When I tested it before recording this video, they all passed except one of them, but right now it looks like the validation is really fast. And so only one of them passed and the rest all failed. But we only need one of them to pass to get the content of the secret file, and it's a 200 OK one. So you could see we were able to call this file before it was validated and deleted by the backend, and we get the content of the secret file. So let's copy this, go back to our exercise, click on Submit Solution, click OK, and here we go. We got congratulations, you solved the lab. All right, so we successfully completed the exercise by exploiting the vulnerability using Turbo Intruder. Usually we script the exercise in Python. However, Turbo Intruder is really just running a Python script. And so we've already technically scripted it in Python, and so we won't write a new script for it. All right, this completes the video.